Nobody lived quite like the stupidly rich Vanderbilt family. They spent millions on mansions, yachts, fashion, and parties. On the surface, it seemed like a fairy tale, but the reality was far darker than anyone realized. A man named Jan Uertzen came to America from the Netherlands in 1650. He was a servant and began working for a rich family known as the Van Kouwenovens. This new life led to a new name. Little did he know it would become one of the most recognized names in history. For his new last name, John took the Dutch word van, meaning from, and combined it with the name of his hometown, De Bilt. But it would be a long time before the Vanderbilt family gained its infamous reputation. It was Jan's great-great-great-grandson who was the first to become wealthy, Cornelius Vanderbilt, a.k.a. the Commodore. He rose up from a lower-class existence on Staten Island and became rich in the shipping and railroad industries. Around the middle of the 1800s, he moved his family to Manhattan and built a house in what is now the affluent Greenwich Village. By 1877, the sickly Commodore found himself restricted by his own ailments. For 8 months, he rarely left his house. By the time he was on his deathbed, he'd amassed over $100 million, which in today's money would be over $3 billion. However, before he died, he had some important decisions to make. What was he going to do with all his riches? Commodore first gave $1 million to build a school called Vanderbilt University in Nashville. Next, he had to decide how to divvy up the rest between his rather large collection of potential heirs. When they finally read the will, they likely couldn't believe their eyes. The Commodore shocked everyone by leaving almost everything to just one of his heirs, his eldest son, William Henry Vanderbilt, also known as Billy. Not surprisingly, the rest of the family was furious, and more than that, suspicious. After all, there was another son and 9 daughters who received next to nothing. They were not going to take this lying down, and 3 of Billy's siblings went to court. They accused him of hiring a spiritualist who duped their father into leaving him all of his money. Billy wanted to spare his family the public humiliation of a trial, so he settled with his siblings, although he didn't offer them very much. As it turned out, Billy had precious little time to enjoy his grand inheritance. In 1885, just 8 years after his father, Billy died of a stroke. The remarkable thing was that in that short time, he had doubled the money his father left him. Billy was good at amassing money, but he had little need for it. He often said that money made him anxious. He blamed his poor health on being wealthy, and was prone to looking at his poorer neighbors and feeling envious. Most of Billy's fortune went to his 2 oldest sons. First, there was Cornelius Vanderbilt II, who did not increase the wealth of the family due to his great generosity. Then there was the second son, William Kissam Vanderbilt, who was more interested in horses than amassing a fortune. In 1875, William married Alva Erskine Smith, who many thought was simply out for his money. Alva had extravagant taste. She had her husband buy her yachts, and she enjoyed collecting mansions, so much so that she eventually boasted 9 of them. But this wasn't enough. She wanted something that money couldn't buy. New York high society didn't accept the Vanderbilts because they came from new money, their fortunes not strictly accumulated through inheritance. Alva decided to buy her way in through architecture. She spent 3 years and $3 million building a home. By this time, William and Alva had welcomed a daughter, Consuelo. Alva was a strict disciplinarian with Consuelo. She would strike her with a riding crop and made her wear a steel rod to correct her posture. One thing Alva really wanted was a regal title to go along with her regal lifestyle. Her idea was to press her daughter into marrying royalty, and the opportunity presented itself with Charles Spencer Churchill, who happened to be the Duke of Marlborough. The thing was, the Duke also had ulterior motives. Neither Consuelo nor the Duke wanted to be together, but that didn't stop the marriage from taking place. With this union, Alva got her connection to royalty, and the Duke got access to the Vanderbilt fortune to save his dukedom from financial ruin. Surprisingly, the marriage lasted 26 years. Just before Consuelo's marriage to the Duke of Marlborough, Alva announced that she wanted a divorce from William Vanderbilt. Divorce was unheard of in high society at the time, and she did so on the grounds that her husband had cheated on her. But some people believe that William had not committed adultery. Instead, they alleged that he hired a woman to act as his mistress. The question was, why? Apparently, he thought it would help him get out of his tumultuous marriage to Alva. William eventually remarried and moved to France, doting on the horses he adored so much. William didn't really like money. Reportedly, he said, "Inherited wealth is a real handicap to happiness. It has left me with nothing to hope for, with nothing definite to seek or strive for." So far, Billy Vanderbilt's children had not done well with the family fortune. Cornelius II had given too much away, and William was more into horses than amassing a fortune. Then there was the younger brother, George. He had an idea to make a real name for himself, no matter what the cost. George Washington Vanderbilt II wanted a big house, a really big house. He bought 125,000 acres in North Carolina and hired an architect. He wanted a house with 250 rooms covering over 175,000 square feet. Therefore, it's no surprise that the Biltmore estate remains to this day the largest house in America. But it soon became a problem. Building a house this colossal made a deep cut into the Vanderbilt fortune, and maintaining it wasn't cheap either. George and his wife Edith were in over their heads with this massive mansion. But to make matters worse, their lives took a tragic turn in 1914 when George died during a routine appendectomy. Suddenly, Edith had the monumental house all to herself, including the financial responsibility. Eventually, the family had to do something that most Vanderbilts would have turned their noses up at. Edith's daughter Cornelia opened Biltmore Estate to the public in 1930, allowing anyone to take a look at the life of the Vanderbilts. Speaking of lavish homes, in 1934 Gladys Vanderbilt inherited a summer residence called the Breakers. The 70-room, 138,000 square feet palace was built in 1895 for Cornelius Vanderbilt II, and Gladys eventually began leasing it out to the Preservation Society of Newport County for $1 per year. Gladys's brother was Reginald Claypool Vanderbilt, who had a reputation for gambling away the family fortune and was also a notorious womanizer. Reggie had a brother named Cornelius Vanderbilt III, who went by Neely. Gladys spent loads of money just trying to keep up appearances in high society. He bragged that he was the first Vanderbilt heir to decrease the family fortune. In 1896, Neely fell in love with Grace Graham Wilson, and since his father opposed their relationship, they eloped. This made his parents so angry that they disinherited him, meaning that when the time came, Neely received $500,000 of the family fortune, and his brother Alfred received almost $70 million. Alfred Gwynn Vanderbilt seemed to have a good head on his shoulders, except when it came to marriage. 7 years into his marriage to Ellen Tuck French, she abruptly moved out of their home, allegedly because he'd been having an affair. While he seemed like a cad, Alfred eventually became a hero. In 1915, he boarded the RMS Lusitania on a business trip to Liverpool. Off the coast of Ireland, tragedy struck. A German U-boat sent a torpedo in the direction of the ship, which did irreparable damage. It was sinking fast, and it looked like Alfred was going down with it. As the ship sank, Alfred valiantly gave his life vest to a terrified woman clutching onto her baby. Over 1,000 people lost their lives that day, and Alfred was one of them. This meant one fewer Vanderbilt, but still no shortage of heirs. The Vanderbilts were growing in number, and this meant more people stood to inherit from the family fortune. Since the new generation didn't seem particularly interested in running the business, the money was quickly drying up. The fortune came chiefly from the railway industry, but America was rapidly changing. The railroad wasn't the only way to move people and products anymore. In the 1930s, the Depression hit America hard, and it wasn't kind to the Vanderbilts either. By this time, Reggie Vanderbilt had ended up in an early grave due to his drinking. Now his wife and daughter, both named Gloria, had little to live on. His wife wasn't born a Vanderbilt, so she couldn't count on anything from the family fortune. The 18-month-old Gloria, who was the great-great-great-granddaughter of the Commodore, was another story. When she turned 21, she'd inherit a colossal sum of cash. The Vanderbilts weren't fond of Gloria Morgan and her extravagant lifestyle. Reggie's sister Gertrude wanted custody of little Gloria, and so they all went to court. Because of the wealth and prestige of the Vanderbilts, the media was about to have a field day. One of the first on the stand was Gloria Morgan's nurse, who painted a rather unsympathetic picture of her. She claimed their home was filthy and even infested with rodents. The takeaway from this testimony was that Morgan was unspeakably cruel to little Gloria. After shocking testimony came from the maid, she scandalously reported that she had seen Morgan in bed with another woman. The courtroom erupted, and the judge had to clear everyone out before continuing. But perhaps the most stunning statements came from little Gloria herself, who said she was afraid of her mother. Morgan's lawyers couldn't believe their ears. Gloria's Aunt Gertrude had coached her on what to say. Her plan worked, and she won custody of the child. After the end of the trial of the century, Gloria Vanderbilt had very little connection with her mother. On top of that, Aunt Gertrude wasn't exactly motherly either. Gloria had to turn to her nanny for a mother figure. Gloria took her troubled childhood and decided to work in the theater, appearing on Broadway and in both live and recorded TV dramas. With her angelic face, she kicked off a career in fashion by working as a model when she was just 15. But she was more than just a pretty face. She was also a skilled painter, and eventually her work featured on a line of scarves. An offer followed to put her signature and swan logo on the pocket of a pair of blue jeans. At this time, the idea of a designer jean didn't exist. Gloria and Indian designer Mohan Morjani had an idea to make their designer jeans very, very tight, and they were a huge success. After her third marriage, 7 years with director Sidney Lumet, Vanderbilt married Wyatt Emery Cooper. With Cooper, she had 2 sons, and it seemed that she had finally found the right guy. She spent 15 years with Cooper until he died on the operating table at the age of 50. Ironically, he was the first younger man she'd married. On July 22, 1988, her 23-year-old son, Carter, jumped out of their 14th-floor penthouse apartment in New York. Vanderbilt's other son, Anderson Cooper, made his way in life through hard work, unlike some other Vanderbilts. He said that early in his life, his mother had assured him there would be no trust fund. Cooper doesn't use the Vanderbilt name and rose to prominence without it. He's living proof that the Vanderbilt fortune has run its course, and there are a few reasons why. Back in 1973, the Vanderbilts got together for a reunion. As they looked around the room, they all had a stunning revelation. Not one of them was a millionaire. Opulent parties, fashion, horses, yachts. The Vanderbilts had been living deliciously for about a century. Some people believe that the Commodore, the one who started the whole Vanderbilt fortune, forgot to teach his heirs an important lesson. He made their lives very easy, but he didn't teach them how to stay wealthy. Some say he should have done what fellow wealthy patriarch John Jacob Astor did. His idea was to set up a trust that was split 50-50 between his children and his grandchildren, and required the same split for future generations. This way, the family learned to hold on to their money. Another reason for the fall of the Vanderbilts was their homes. During their prime, the family employed the most sought-after architects. Whether it was a mansion in New York or a palace in the countryside, no expense was spared when it came to creating outrageously beautiful living spaces. The thing about those homes was that they were often empty. The summer homes only had residents for a few weeks of the year. When it came to the city homes, the story was similar. They had a problem passing them down to the next generation. No one seemed to want them. They built loads of properties in New York City for extravagant sums, and by the 1940s, they were all gone, reduced to rubble. Even when it came to departing the earth, the Vanderbilts did it with style and a hefty price tag. In Staten Island, there's a mausoleum that serves as a burial site for the family. The designer was the famous architect Richard Morris Hunt, who took his inspiration from an abbey in France. The Vanderbilt family cemetery and mausoleum remains a New York City designated landmark even today.